Hello, North Model Congress. My name is Siddharth Satish and I am your webmaster. And in this video, we're going to be going over how to write a bill. Now, the purpose of a bill is to address a current issue. So when writing one, think about the following. Is it current? The relevance of it to your constituents. And constituents is a term you will hear thrown around multiple times in Model Congress, and it simply refers to the people who you are serving. Remember, we are emulating the legislative branch of the United States government, which means that while you are competing or practicing, you are assuming the role of a senator or representative, which means you are one step higher on the authority chain than a normal civilian. And as a result, people who don't have that authority that you have are referred to as constituents. Now, second, understand, and I've already mentioned this, you're emulating the legislative branch, which means that you're only making laws and regulations. You're not changing any Supreme Court precedent. You can choose to do that with the law, but you're not going and making sweeping rulings on different cases and stuff like that, which means that you always need to keep your powers in check. There are some things that the federal government can't do, and that's an overextension of their power. And whenever you overextend your power, that infringes on constitutionality because of the fact that it's not a power ordained to you, but you're still exercising it. So, to make sure that your legislation is not unconstitutional, make sure it doesn't go too much out of the box from the federal government's and the legislative branches enumerated powers. And this can all be found inside of the Bill of Rights and the United States Constitution, should you have any questions. The last question you should be asking yourself when having thought of all of this is feasibility. Is your proposal and your purpose of the bill feasible? And is it something that is attainable? And that's something that you should have in your mind throughout the process. And the purpose of a bill is to be feasible. So if you're not achieving that goal, you're not doing it right. Now, the process. Begin by brainstorming and thinking of a few ideas of what you would like to change in the present society and the status quo. Read on a few news articles, see the things that are going on publicly, and that should give you a good grasp of things that are happening around in society. Then, write your bill and prepare bullets for your authorship speech. An authorship speech is when you present your actual legislation and tell us why we should vote for it. You obviously had a reason for writing it and tell us what that reason was, and we will evaluate that reason and try to support you in your attempt to reform the government and our society. Now, let me go over the structure of how you should write a bill, and all of this can be found on our website in the sample bill section. If you click on that PDF, it should give you a blank template with access to everything. And this is just an example of a completely filled out bill. First, you'll see that it has the conference name, which is Yale Model Congress 2017. This would obviously be changed for mock. Let's say it's the Yale Model Congress mock. I would just say Yale Model Congress mock 2020. Then for committee, you would simply leave it blank unless you do know what committee it falls under, but we don't stress this too much inside of our mocks. Author is going to just be your name. Delegation is going to be our school. Now, in bold, you will have the title of the bill, which is one sentence summary of your legislation. Please don't make it more than one sentence. And name it like you would the title of a book with important words capitalized. Then you will say be enacted by the Yale Model Congress mock or North Model Congress. And then you would go into your preamble. Preamble is where you state some facts that are relevant to your legislation. Many people just read your bill at committee. They don't have any other background, and this is a good place for them to really understand what it is that you're doing and the motivation behind it. So you'd start with whereas. You always start with whereas. Give a fact or statistic, then semicolon whereas again, and you continue the semicolon whereas until you're done with your facts and statistics, and at the end you just end with a semicolon. Don't give too many facts and statistics, and don't make arguments here. This is just facts. These are just things we should know. Then you will go into the sections of your bill. Section 1 is when you're talking about the bill. You can have as many sections as you want and split it up like you would do a paragraph or just what feels normal to you, and use subsections as necessary, and make sure everything in your subsection relates to your main body section. Now, section 4, and this doesn't have to be section 4, it's typically the last section of your legislation, is when it will go into effect. 90 days is an emergency legislation, which means it needs 2/3 majority to pass. 91 or above is in the sense that it's a majority just to pass. And something that this legislation does not contain, because it's not necessary, is a funding clause. And typically, this is before you have that this bill shall go into effect 90 or 91 days after its passage. It's usually this section right before where you say this bill will be funded by the House or Senate Appropriations Committee. And that's where that department, so the Appropriations Committee, will determine how to fund the legislation using federal government allocated budget and funds. Now, it's hard to come up with ideas for legislation, and here are some good starting off points. But this is just topics that are suitable for model Congress bills. These are suggestions, and you can choose a topic not included. Make sure it's appropriate, relevant, and feasible. And when choosing a topic, you should also consider your party affiliation. You may not have one that's explicit, but you may have one that's implicit, your political ideologies, and your state and district. Now, this goes over all the things that you need to know to write your next legislation. So I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for tuning in.